We have to take you live now to Prime Minister Trudeau, who is speaking. Let's listen and see what he says here.
Energy, more of everything to run the U.S. economy full steam ahead. Canada has all those resources, and we stand at the ready to work with the United States to create a booming and secure North American economy. The alternative for them would be more resources from Russia, China, or Venezuela. Canada is a safe, secure, and reliable partner in an uncertain world. Notre relation commerciale avec les États-Unis,
our trade relationship with the United States is a win-win relationship. Therefore, we will continue to use all the tools at our disposal to demonstrate that.
President Trump also repeated his concerns about the border. While less than 1% of fentanyl and illegal immigrants that enter the United States come from Canada, our government has already acted to address the concerns raised by the President about border security with an over $1 billion comprehensive border plan. We're already working collaboratively to keep our citizens safe on both sides of the border. Of course, if the President does choose to proceed with tariffs on Canada, Canada will respond, and everything is on the table. Working in unison with Team Canada, as Team Canada, with business leaders, organized labor, civil society, Indigenous leaders, and premiers from coast to coast to coast, we are prepared for every possible scenario. In fact, just last night, I spoke to Premier Ford in his capacity as chair of the Council of the Federation, and he reiterated his unwavering commitment on behalf of Canadian premiers to working all together. This is an important and challenging moment for Canada and for Canadians, and we know there will be many such moments. Through all of it, I want to be clear that we have Canadians' backs. Notre gouvernement va toujours être là pour défendre.
Our government will always be there to defend Canada, our workers, businesses, and our economy, as well as our sovereignty.
Protect our national interest while we protect the most successful economic and security relationship the world has ever seen. I and my cabinet will continue to work with leaders across the country who've stepped up to unite in defense of Canadian workers, Canadian businesses, Canadian sovereignty. And that is precisely what we will continue to focus on today during this cabinet retreat. Thank you. Merci d'être ici. With that, I'm looking forward to your questions.
All right, we'll take 20 minutes of questions. One question, one follow-up. 20 minutes de questions, une question à suivre. Merci.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Laura Osmond with The Logic. How do you interpret the conflicting timelines that the Trump administration provided yesterday, targeting a study by April 1st, but talking about imposing tariffs by February?
Donald Trump is, as always, a skilled negotiator and will do what he can to keep his negotiating partners a little bit off balance. We are confident in the facts on the ground. We know that if the United States is going to see an increase in jobs and manufacturing and economic growth, they're going to require more energy, more inputs, everything from lumber and concrete to steel and aluminum to critical minerals that are the essential ingredients in the economy of the future. And Canada has all that in an extraordinarily reliable and close partner. We have lots we can do together. We will be there to emphasize that we should be doing more together. If there are tariffs, we are ready to respond and defend the Canadian interest, but we will continue to remain steady in these times of uncertainty. Monsieur Trump est un négociateur habile.
Mr. Trump is a skilled negotiator who knows.
Ses partenaires de négociation un peu déséquilibrés.
He knows how to keep his negotiating partners off balance, and it can work sometimes, but we are focused on the facts. We're focusing on the fact that if the U.S. economy is going to be going into a period of prosperity and increased business activity and growth, they're going to need more energy, more steel, more more aluminum, and more critical minerals. Canada is the best, closest, and most trustworthy partner that the U.S. has in the world. We will be there to work with them to create prosperity for North America. But if there are unfair tariffs, then we will respond in a strong and robust fashion. We will be there to support Canadians and defend our interests.
Donald Trump could continue to dangle these threats over Canada for many months, and even that will have an impact on investment here in Canada. How do you guard against that in the meantime?
We have and will continue to demonstrate that Canada is a reliable and strong partner and a great place to invest. Canadian workers are world-class. Canadian resources are needed in Canada and around the world. Canadian ingenuity and innovation is a key part of building a global economy of the future. We know there are lots of people continuing to be interested in being part of the Canadian economy's tremendous success.
Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. Laurence Martin de Radio-Canada. Vous avez présenté aux Américains un plan pour la frontière.
You're going to present a plan to the Americans for the border of about $1.3 billion. Despite getting rid of flag polling, is the plan being misunderstood? Is something not working? On the contrary, we saw that with the emergency declaration at the U.S. southern border, they do not seem to think that there is an urgency with the northern border. There are issues that we will be working on, but when you're talking about less than 1% of the fentanyl that gets into the U.S. coming from Canada and less than 1% of illegal immigrants in the U.S. coming from Canada, then it's certain we are working towards making that 0%, but it is not an urgency. And with the collaboration that we've already seen with the incoming administration, that has been positive, and we will continue to keep abreast of that and keep working on it. But yesterday, in his speech, Mr. Trump had the impression that we're looking to buy helicopters. And so is that also for the border? The border will remain an issue for the Americans and for Canada. When talking about illegal weapons or illegal drugs coming into Canada through the U.S., if we're talking about irregular immigrants in either direction, we have been strengthening our personnel at the borders for years, and not just because it's in the interest of the U.S., but it's because it's in the interest of Canadians to have strong and secure borders.
Border issues are an issue for Americans, but also for Canadians. We know that whether it's illegal guns or a range of illegal drugs flowing northwards across that border, whether it's migration or potential migration going in either ways in irregular fashions across our border, it is in the interests of Canadians as well as Americans that we continue to step up on reinforcing our border measures and the integrity and the control that we have. That's why we have been investing in protecting our borders over the past number of months and years, and why this $1 billion package is, yes, about the American incoming administration, but it's also about Canadians being safe in a more uncertain world.
Prime Minister Ramsden, the Toronto Star. You said earlier that everything is on the table. I assume that includes fully matching the 25% tariffs the Trump administration is proposing. How quickly do you think the Canadian government could ramp that up? And if you do have to take that measure, isn't it Canadian consumers who will feel the brunt of that?
First of all, as I said, everything is on the table, and I support the principle of dollar-for-dollar matching tariffs. It's something that we are absolutely going to be looking at if that is how they move forward. The bottom line, as you say, is that import tariffs, like the 25% that President Trump is proposing, are actually paid or would be paid by American consumers. And if and when Canada needs to respond with equivalent tariffs on imports from the United States, those would be paid by Canadian consumers. That's why we will look, as we have in the past, at things that have replacements for Canadian consumers that wouldn't be tariffed. The example from last time was Heinz's ketchup being replaced by French's ketchup because French's was still using Canadian tomatoes in its ketchup. Having Canadian consumers have alternatives to having to spend tariffs on American inputs is part of how we make sure that we don't bear, or Canadians don't bear, undue costs around tariffs. At the same time, there will be costs for Canadians if we move forward on tariffs to the United States, and that's why we will be there to support and compensate Canadians and Canadian businesses depending on the response we have. The principle is that we will be there to support Canadians, and Canadians will be there to support each other during any difficult times of tariffs. Les tarifs coûtent cher aux consommateurs du pays qui impose ces tarifs-là.
Consumers of the country that is imposing them. If Donald Trump imposes tariffs coming from Canada, it's the Americans who will be paying more. And when we respond to those tariffs, it will be Canadians who will be paying more for American products. This is why we will need to choose the items that we impose tariffs on, so the Canadians have other alternatives. And that's also why we'll be there to help to offset those tariffs and help Canadians and Canadian businesses that would be affected by these potential tariffs. But as I've been saying from the very beginning, our goal is to avoid having those tariffs imposed in any fashion. And we'd like to continue our positive relationship with the United States.
How can your government manage a situation where your closest ally and trading partner says at 9 a.m. that tariffs will come maybe after a study in 3 months, and at 9 p.m. says they're coming in a week? How do you manage that unpredictability?
We've been here before. During President Trump's first term in office, he announced challenges to our trading relationship that we were able to work through. We negotiated a new Canada, U.S., Mexico trade deal that has resulted in tremendous growth and prosperity for all three countries. It was a true win-win-win, and I note that the incoming administration highlighted that was a successful win for them that they negotiated in their first term. We will stay steady. We will stay steady on focusing on defending both Canadian interests, but also on defending the economic relationship between Canada and the U.S. itself. We know that a win-win or a win-win-win is not just possible, it is desirable. And our focus is remaining calm, remaining strong, and responding as necessary to actions by the United States.
Hi, Prime Minister Tom Perry, CBC. I know we've been here before, you've been here before, but do you think it's more challenging this time around? I'm wondering if you think there's a difference between the second Trump administration and the first one.
I think what we've seen, particularly with the number of executive orders and announcements made on the first day, that they have been focused on moving forward rapidly on creating benefits for the American economy in the extreme short term. That is something that we are prepared to help with and contribute to. If the American economy is going to need more energy, more inputs for its manufacturing, more security in its partnerships, Canada is there to provide that. We know that there is always going to be a certain amount of unpredictability and rhetoric coming out from this administration. Our focus is on the substance of things, where Canada and the U.S. do well when we do things together. Je pense qu'on a déjà vu que
I think that we've already seen that this time the Trump administration will be working more quickly. It will be imposing more measures as of the first day, faster than they did in 2017. But we are here as a trustworthy, responsible partner to the U.S. We can do great things together quickly, and we are here to do that.
Prime Minister, just wondering, I could ask you, have you requested a conversation with Donald Trump? Is anything scheduled, or is there any kind of official interaction between your government and the U.S. to figure out what's actually going on tariffs?
We had a number of ministers down there for the inauguration day yesterday, continued to engage with all counterparts. I speak regularly with President Trump, and will continue to, as in regards to next formal interactions. So we'll stay tuned.
Hi, Mr. Trudeau. Mackenzie Gray with Global News. We've seen some from the premiers that they think it's somewhat inevitable that tariffs are coming in. So after the first day of Mr. Trump's administration, do you think that there's any possible way that Canada can avoid these 25% tariffs?
Our focus is on avoiding tariffs. We know that if the American economy is going to face see the boom that Donald Trump is predicting, they're going to need more energy. They're going to need more steel and aluminum, more critical minerals, more of the things that Canada sells to the United States every single day. And we are there to be constructive, positive partners. So our entire focus is on avoiding the imposition of tariffs on Canada. If they do move forward with tariffs, our response will be robust and rapid and measured, but very strong. The goal will be to get those tariffs off as quickly as possible. And in order to do that, everything is on the table. If we do move forward with that, we will be there to support Canadian businesses, Canadian industry. It'll be something that all Canadians will pull together on, and we will make sure that no one industry or part of the country is carrying a larger share of the burden of trying to get these tariffs removed than any other region or industry.
Yesterday, Ms. Jolie said it was all about the border, and we did the job on the border. If that's the case, then why is there still a situation where tariffs are even being considered by the U.S.?
That's a question for the American administration.
Prime Minister Brian Platt with Bloomberg. Donald Trump had promised to put in tariffs on day one of his presidency. In the lead up, he used a lot of aggressive rhetoric about economic force. What actually got put onto paper is a much more legalistic, gradual process of study. When you see what's put onto paper as opposed to his rhetoric, are you personally encouraged or relieved by what actually got put down in an executive order?
As I said, we are confident on the facts on the ground. Canada provides many of the necessary inputs that the American economy is going to need in order to grow and boom economically, whether it's energy, whether it's critical minerals, whether it's fertilizer, whether it's uranium. These are things that Canada provides from nearby, affordably, securely, reliably, particularly when alternatives are more of the same things from China or Russia or Venezuela or elsewhere around the world. We are confident that the facts bear out that this is a win-win relationship. We look forward to working with the American administration to demonstrate that not only do we do things well now, we should be doing more together to strengthen North America's competitiveness, to create true win-wins across the border, and to continue to compete successfully with the world.
Prime Minister Michael Couture with CTV News. You talked about how many of your ministers behind you made those trips to the U.S. How frustrated are you personally that despite all of those efforts, we're still here?
We've been here before, Mike. The first Trump presidency represented moments of uncertainty and threats of instability that we were able to work through constructively, responsibly, for the benefit of workers, businesses, and growth on both sides of the border. We will continue to take seriously the proposals put forward by the President and his administration, but we will also continue to remain steady and strong in advocating not just for Canadian interests, but for this incredibly successful trading relationship that benefits both American workers and Canadian workers and can do even more together.
You had mentioned earlier that you're going to continue to try and make the case that Canada is the right place to invest. Businesses prefer certainty. They look south and they say, well, we know what we're going to get down there. So how do you convince businesses that Canada is still the place to be?
I would suggest that part of Donald Trump's approach does bring in uncertainty, whether he's going to move forward on tariffs on their closing trading partners or not. I think businesses look for, and investors look for reliability and predictability, yes. And Canada has demonstrated both through a successful negotiation of the USMCA in the first term, and through continued deepening of trade ties and prosperity across our border, that Canada remains a strong and stable place to invest, because we will always be a robust and successful partner to the U.S. economy.
This will be the last question. Dernière question, s'il vous plaît.
Guillaume Saint-Pierre, Journal de Montréal. Bonjour, M. Trudeau. Ça semble clair que les tarifs, c'est des arbres de négociation, on le voit avec la frontière. Mais il y a d'autres choses que les Américains pourraient vouloir négocier, entre autres les taxes sur les services en ligne, taxes Netflix, ce genre de choses-là. Est-ce que vous êtes prêt à négocier sur ce point-là, de donner du lest, ou d'autres points, et quels pourraient être ces autres éléments de négociation?
Negotiating elements be. Obviously, I'm not going to be negotiating on the public stage. There are so many things that we do together as Canadians and Americans that creates prosperity. It truly is a win-win relationship. But as you mentioned, it is a relationship that contains many different aspects and facets, and we will always be there to work constructively with our U.S. partners. At the same time, we will continue to defend Canadian interests, values, and sovereignty, and Canadian art and culture. We know just how important it is to defend our interests, while at the same time seeking to work well together with our U.S. partners.
This concludes today's press conference.
Merci tout le monde. Merci.
Okay, Prime Minister Trudeau speaking live in Quebec. This is where the Liberal cabinet retreat is taking place. A lot of questions there, obviously, on the threat of tariffs. We know yesterday President Trump suggested as soon as February the 1st, we could be looking at a 25% tariff on Canadian goods. Trudeau responding to some questions on that, saying if they have to respond to tariffs, he'd be looking at the possibility of a dollar for dollar response when it comes to that threat. Also acknowledging there's the unpredictability of what President Trump might do here. The Prime Minister saying that we've been here before. Also saying when it comes to the request from President Trump, saying his concern is the border, saying he has concerns with illegal drugs and migrants crossing our border. The Prime Minister is saying that less than 1% of fentanyl and illegal immigrants come from Canada. Obviously, this is a big story, and we will continue to monitor what the federal government is planning to do with that threat of tariffs now looming.